And we're live. How are you guys doing?
Another
Good
week,
here.
boys. Great to be here.
Happy Tuesday.
Lots to
We
talk
were
about.
just we were just talking about AI and Bitcoin when Forrest and I joined Forrest, because I now also am fully in the hype of OpenClaw, especially when I realized this guy comes from my neighborhood. Like Peter Steinberger is literally not only from Austria, but from Upper Austria, and when I went almost in the same school as him, I decided against this school and went in a different school. But I just wanted to drop that, and that was
Wow.
really the thing
Wow.
that got me over the edge to try out OpenClaw, because this guy actually comes from Austria. Yeah, now I'm also running my agent. I haven't figured out so much, but that thing is really interesting, like this whole agent thing, and then also the integration long term with Bitcoin, and like having someone do work for you and then he can use Bitcoin. What do you guys have thinking so far with AI and Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, the agent stuff is incredibly interesting. I mean, we've seen bots online for quite a while, but they've been very unsophisticated, and it's been difficult for the average tech tinkerer to get their hands dirty with it. And I think having the LLM be the engine and having a persistent memory where you can basically, with these agents, you can tell them, hey, here's a YouTube video, go watch it, digest the transcript of it, take what you've learned and go implement it somewhere. And it goes, it starts to move across the internet and starts to figure out what is the best option to do stuff. And I think the thing to recognize with AI is this is the worst it's going to be, right? It's only going to get better. There's innovation that needs to happen to protect against like things like data poisoning, and there's debates around like AI scaling laws, diminishing and things like that. But I think those are hurdles that can be overcome by technologists. So I don't know. I think it's amazing. Like, it's been like a month or two now with this OpenClaw thing being out. And immediately we saw people talking about, okay, how does Bitcoin fit into this? We saw Calais create, I think it was him. He created like a Lightning wallet that an agent can use. There's people experimenting with giving Bitcoin to their agent and seeing what they can do with it, which is just such a perfect fit, right? We've always talked about, or people in Bitcoin have always talked about how Bitcoin is the internet of money, and now we have the AI of the internet using the internet of money. And I think this is just going to become something that happens way more and way more useful. And I think that that's still like a talking point with this, is people are saying like, oh, like I just use ChatGPT. What do I need this agent for? This is like learning to take apart an engine. If you're a mechanic, it's cool, but it's not that useful, right? But really, the use of this is it's contained by the technology so far, which is expanding, but it's also contained by your imagination and how much you're willing to actually like think of, what could I do with this? How is this useful? Which is just having the ability to expand something just from an idea is what we've seen AI be able to do so far. So, I mean, it's just going to continue down that lane. And I mean, we can get into so many other things, but that's just my initial thoughts on AI right now and where we're at.
I love that. And I had my huge moment because I did all those things already with AI. ChatGPT was literally my daily drive for so many different things that I was doing. And I was first thinking, okay, why do I need this agent thing? Like why, like I already have my agent, like I already have my AI agent. And so the first thing that I did, asking ChatGPT, why the heck would I need an agent? And he's like, yeah, like you're right, like you don't need it, like all that crap that he kind of confirmed bias is doing with you with AI. But then I asked him, okay, be my AI consultant, ask me 10 questions, and then based on those questions, figure out if I need it or not. And he asked me these 10 questions, I answered him, and he's like, Yeah, you absolutely need it. Like you can interpolate it here. You have this use case. You have this use case, and then my mind just freaking expanded, and I was like, "Oh, I can use this. Like I can when my YouTube video uploads on YouTube, it can automatically take the transcript from that and give me based on that transcript video and can get based on that tweet ideas connected to exactly the audience, exactly to a video clip, and then actually I just have to like press send if I don't want to give him the access to my tweets, which I probably won't give in any near-term future, and make all those things automatically happen. And this is like one of the very small examples that I now came up with in the first, 48 hours that I'm playing with that thing. And I really want to build like a small, almost like a farm that does a lot of the heavy lifting of the post-production, because I was this year on the brink of, should I get an assistant at like some point, because I do a lot of like admin stuff. And then I was like, probably if I'm careful, an agent could take care of that because it's all digital. I don't need a physical assistant. How do you like Joel, Brandon, like think about that whole agent thing?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I mean, obviously, it's going to be, like George Forrest says, is the worst it's ever going to be. The thing I think about, and just to bring it from a Bitcoin place, is just the incentives, right? The incentives of the system that we're in, and the one thing that worries me, like AI overall, the AGI, and all these things on the surface don't bother me at all. And sorry, I'm tangenting from your direct question. But just overall, the incentives of the fiat system that we're in is what scares me. Having a world with AI everywhere, that's what scares me, because it's obviously a zero-sum game in fiat. So now it's, hey, my time and energy is slipping through my hands, so I'm going to literally do anything, and I mean anything, to get by and get mine in this world, in the zero-sum world of fiat, which people are just doing what the incentives of the system are of fiat. And a lot of them don't even know, right? We talk about this all the time from the Bitcoiner world. And so that's what worries me from an AI perspective. And that's why I think that we are coming to this crossroads very quickly, whether it's CBDCs and digital passports and UBI, or it's Bitcoin. Either you're going to have freedom in Bitcoin, or you're going to have CBDCs and UBI government money and in a fiat, Terminator world. It's kind of like, it's up to us. And that's the crossroad that I rapidly see approaching. Now, to the AI part of it, yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal. I haven't gone down the agent road yet necessarily. I just dabbled just a little bit for, a half an hour or something like that. But just ChatGPT, Perplexity, all of the chat bots, I guess maybe you want to call them, right? Like I've dabbled with whatever there are, 10 of those, 8 of them, dozen of them, whatever they're so, and they all are interesting in their own right and have little different answers and variations here and there, and just it's mind blowing there's so many people that aren't even using them yet and aren't even like there, don't even think about it. So I think the big thing to me though, again, to kind of bring it full circle though, again, is your kids, your children, the younger generation, where it's like even just school. I spend a lot of time thinking about school. Our kids are homeschooled, and I think about how useless government-run compulsory schools are, and the normal school system. I mean, like the chasm that we have to cross as society, like what you guys are talking about, versus where like the average person is living in. Like they don't understand Bitcoin, they don't even understand the money they use now, the currency. They're sending their kids to compulsory schools. That gap is wild, and that there has to be an auditing for that. And that's the part that worries me and is a little bit scary to me. I have faith overall in the whole system, so I think it's going to work out fine. However, there's going to be some cataclysmic moments, black swans, civil unrest. There's going to be some wild times to close this gap. And people talk about a wealth inequality gap, but there's really just like an education, a technology gap that humans are living in right now that is wildly, wildly diverging. And I don't know how you rectify that necessarily, but I do know that Bitcoin being the incentive structure of the system is the way that we can hopefully the only way that gives us a chance to heal organically and bring all of that back together again.
Very true. I mean, there's going to be trade-offs to everything, good and bad. I'm definitely on the side of AI being positive, not just AI, but how it was all released and how it's going to be released in the future in terms of being open source. I think open source is going to be the savior for that kind of world you played out there, Brandon, because when you think about it, all these big companies in the stock, the S&P, the companies who have really captured a lot of things, a lot of human effort, they've kind of siloed it and they've made a lot of money off it. And I think even in the last week, we've seen Claude, I think it was Claude's security code or something. They basically announced that. And then there was another company on the S&P 500 that basically collapsed because this new Claude software could do what it did, except way cheaper. So that valuation collapsed. And then there was somebody who released another open source software on GitHub that basically replicated Claude code security, which made that one almost obsolete. This happened in about 48 hours. And so if you think that it's going to slow down, it's not. It's going to get much faster than that. And so if you think about that, how that plays out long term, to me, is that a lot of these companies, these big centralized entities that had a lot of power, influence, money, they're basically forcing people to invest in their companies through, the pension funds and things like that. But they don't really have any value anymore. It's just kind of what you guys were alluding to there. The world hasn't really caught up to that yet, but it's happening fast. And I think that as that happens, that wealth kind of just shifts to different places. And I think a lot of that ends up in Bitcoiners' hands, which to me, it's great to be here for the number to go up, but I think Bitcoiners need to understand when that number goes up, what kind of influence and decision-making and power that Bitcoiners will actually have. And I think that's what gives me the most hope for the future, using something like this to basically take all that power and monopoly from these big entities and give it back to the people. So there's not AI farms everywhere. People are actually doing it from their own house. That's a very powerful idea.
Yeah, I just want to double down on that point there, George. Oh, the only reason or one of the really key linchpins of why Bitcoin works is because it's open source.
Yeah.
It's given to the world. It's led to all this crypto shit, which has muddled the waters and has been a detriment to Bitcoin from a public perspective for sure. But it's necessary. If it was a closed source project, it would have went the way of eGold and all of this kind of stuff, right? It would have just been centralized and corrupted and controlled and taken down. There's no way it would have worked if it wasn't open source. And open clause, what we kind of initially started talking about here too, completely open source, released to the public, built on by all of the people using it. It's like a self reinforcing building mechanism. It's really cool. And the open source models out there's frontier capable models. We can't run them at home like Kimi K2 and stuff. You're going to need a few GPUs to do that, but it's possible to do that.
Yeah.
And there are open source models that I can run with an Umbrel or a Start9 or a mini PC or a Mac Mini or the computer I'm using, right? So that does give you the ability to have private LLM and private AI, which I think is going to become more and more important. And you're not feeding back your data into a system that is training off of that data. You're able to train your own agent off of your own data and keep that all private, which is one thing the digital world needs more of is the ability to be private. And, I think the open source way of this development is the only way that this works and takes the money out of the software companies. Like you mentioned, S&P 500 companies. I think Salesforce was hit huge, and it's because just all their stuff is proprietary, but it's all under threat by open source developers can destroy and give back the people. It's like the unfortunately I'm using a communist term here, but like it's seizing the means of production. Like it is the power to the people by being able to write code, use code, and not have this closed source system that you are underneath of and they are controlling you because of.
I want to get another perspective in here. I thought about that recently in a podcast about closed source and open source. And the internet in general is open source. Like you have the TCP/IP protocol. You could transact with, like there's the same protocol for everyone. But then the popular apps in the internet, like Google, like Facebook and WhatsApp, like all the popular apps that we're using every day, like TikTok and Instagram, they're all closed sourced. And I was thinking about that. How will this shape up with Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin, as the internet, is also an open source protocol. Everyone can use it. But then I see how people use it, and yes, there are the four of us, and there's like a few in the chat now, and there's like a few people that really go hard in the self custody, run their own node, and all of that. But we are like a very small minority. we are not the everyday Bitcoiner, and most people have their Bitcoin in iBit, on an exchange, maybe even in Stretch, in other things. So like they don't actually have the real Bitcoin with their own keys and broadcasting the transaction with their own node. They use someone else's thing. Now, I have the feeling that this will be the future for Bitcoin, like that most people don't want to deal with self-custody and running their own node. I hope I'm wrong. I think I'm not. I don't know. And now with AI, it's also interesting because you can do all those like open source things, and like it's called OpenClaw and OpenAI, even though OpenAI is not that open anymore. But isn't that the same thing that we are already done with the internet, where it is open source, but in the end of the day, people mostly use the closed source, like they will use the ChatGPT thing. I mean, OpenAI just announced that they acquired, I mean, they cannot acquire OpenClaw, but they acquired like Peter Steinberger, the creator of the thing. So I just want to throw that back to Forrest of like how he thinks this like open source versus closed source thing works, because of the internet it's open source, but like the pub labs are all closed source.
Yeah, it's gonna ebb and flow like that. Like there's times where an open source application like OpenClaw becomes one of the most exciting things, and people start to build on it, use it, and it gains massive adoption really quickly. Still, in the grand scheme of things, it's relatively small compared to a lot of closed source technology we'll use, of course. But it's more so. It's kind of like with Bitcoin, where not everybody's going to take self-custody, but you have the ability to take self-custody that actually gives it part of its power, part of its revolutionary power. It is a bearer asset after all. It's kind of like that with open source. Open source technology is that checks and balance. If the closed source options become too expensive, too useless, too bloated, too crappy, you have that option of going to the open source alternative, which is going to be free. Might take a little bit more effort to set up or something if it's not developed as well, but it's going to be better. Like, and oftentimes, like these sort of closed source systems, they start to degrade because the experience becomes worse. It's like Chrome, the Chrome browser. Brave is starting to take over because it's an open source alternative that, I mean, the fiat minded can just say, hey, I don't have YouTube ads. Awesome. I'm downloading this browser. I'm going to use it instead. It's complete, but it's also giving them tons of privacy. It's open source, and it's moving them away from the Google ecosystem. And that model of paying for things on the internet through advertising, which is totally disruptive as well by not doing that, which is interesting. But yeah, so it's really about experience. And you can look at torrenting as well. Basically, torrenting only became popular because the experience was better, not because it was cheaper or free or anything like that. It was because you had to go to, you basically had to pay so much to get cable. You couldn't get the shows you wanted. And so if you just learn to torrent, you could watch whatever you wanted and just download it all for free. Yes, you're doing something potentially illegal jurisdictionally, maybe, but the experience was way better. And then what came along was Netflix. Netflix stopped people from torrenting things, and Spotify stopped people from torrenting things. People were willing to pay for these things because the experience was even easier than torrenting. So it's really just about, like, there's a lot of people that are just not willing to like put in any effort. But if they do, the open source alternative there, and it's really that check and balance that starts to eat away, and there's going to be sort of these ebbs and flows of popular open source competitors. That's my theory, at least.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Forrest. And I think that's where there's so many good things that are going to happen, and then it's going to be mixed with these bad things. Circling back to what I was saying earlier, like there's going to be stupid things that happen, the way people use AI, whatever. And you never know what's actually real and what's not at times, in the sense of like, what news headlines are you seeing? What's the one girl that was leading the AI at Meta safety thing, and all of her emails, it was deleting all of her emails, or it's, hey, the AI is like, trying to plot to kill the person. Like, I don't know which things are real, which things are not, but like, are there things like that will end up like happening to a degree? Yeah, it will. But then that's where humans, I don't know where I was talking about this before recently, but that's where I do believe in humans in general, because humans inherently, our first instinct is to protect ourselves, and it's to stay alive. So like, humans everywhere collectively, like, there might be some things that really galvanize the country, or galvanize the continent, or galvanize the world, where it's like, oh shit, this is not good. And then you see people come together that normally wouldn't have come together. And then using the tools that we do have to then combat some of the tools that maybe have gone awry a little bit. So I do think Bitcoin, mixed with just the inherent nature of humans to try to stay alive themselves, are going to be battling that. And I do believe we'll be nipping some of these things in the bud at the end of the day. Some of these technologies, like you said, it was like the Spotify and the torrenting and what happened there. Some of these things will naturally progress. And to your point as well, these things won't, like, you think of like the second layer of Lightning, or like third layer, like federated mints, and like things like that. Like, as things become easier, yeah, there probably won't be a ton of people that are like, oh, I'm self-custodying with my wallet, I've got my node setting up and blah blah blah. Yeah, it'll be like the person in the community, like a decentralized governance model, just like how at least America was founded, or maybe a lot of the West when people moved from Europe and came over. That's a lot of what it was. It was a lot of decentralized governance, and hey, we've got a local community, we're governing ourselves. And we've seen that throughout history, I guess, all over the world. But then naturally, you have these bigger conglomerate powers that come together, and they just naturally over time try to take more and more power. So we see this like throughout history, through all governments, on all continents, basically. But this is like this new frontier, and that's what's so hard, I think, for the average person to put even for us, like, we're the average person, the average pleb, like, we don't even know where. This is just the start of the first inning. Like, we just dropped the puck in the hockey game. Like, we have no idea like where this is about to head, and that's what's both very cool and very exciting at the same time. A lot of people are apprehensive and like, where is this going to go? But I do believe that it's the inherent goodness of people, or wanting to stay alive, will combat and beat back a lot of these things before it gets too crazy. Because people are right now they're worried, you're scared, you see these headlines, and people start taking action. You look at like Trump getting kicked off of Twitter 4 or 5 years ago. That was unthinkable in America. That was like, oh, your free speech is gone. Like for an American, that was like, whoa. Well, then what happened? Parler came out. Well, they got taken off the Apple Store. That was another thing. Like right after that, I was like, whoa, like what is happening? Well, then what do we have? Nostr, Elon buys Twitter. Like, things will happen because dumb things happen. We will have good things come from that. And as a Bitcoiner, like, a lot of us want to sit here a lot of times, I think, and I know I'm probably guiltiest of it. We know bad shit is coming, and I want to not have that happen. Like, you want those things to not happen, but at the end of the day, like, life is life, and like, we are humans, and we got to touch the stove, and that's how we learn. So it's like, hey, how do we best protect from when we do touch the stove? How do we minimize that pain, I guess?
I love that. I was thinking about, because Brandon, I think, said it in the end of the last week, that we want to incorporate some of the comments, react to some of the things that are said in the comments, which is really hard, because like there's the flow of the conversation, and then like the comments. But I think after like, now we're here like 20-25 minutes already, I think we can maybe get some of the comments in. And I saw one which I think is which I think represents a lot of the people that currently are in Bitcoin, which is this one from Bar Quest. And he said, my mood swings with Bitcoin price. How do I stop being so emotionally affected by it? And he also later on sent one more saying, I'm still confident, but I want to handle the drawdowns better. And I just preface that before I give it to you guys with, I think we all have it to a certain degree, and the longer you have it, the longer you are in Bitcoin, the less you have it. So I think the first thing to realize, it's kind of normal to feel that way. If you have a bunch of money in Bitcoin, and you see your purchasing power go from X amount to half of X amount within like 4 months or 5 months, what it's been, you would be weird if it doesn't do anything to you. If it doesn't phase you whatsoever and you have no feelings towards that, I think that would be weird. So you having some emotions when the asset that you love goes down 50%, I think it just shows that you're human and it's normal. But what do you guys have to say about handling drawdowns, especially now I don't even know the price, probably something in with 60,000.
It's very difficult to balance the level, the portfolio you have, what assets you hold, with the level of conviction you have, and that conviction can really be a lot more fragile than you might think. We're in a bull run, you understand Bitcoin, some basics of it, maybe even beyond that. Your conviction is way higher, and therefore you allocate way higher to it, and then your conviction will waver when it has a drawdown, which is, as Robin says, completely normal. It's completely normal to feel emotionally distraught from your the purchasing power of your investment. There can be all sorts of crazy emotions. There could be like, oh, why didn't I think this was going to happen? Why did I buy it at this level instead of this level? You can blame yourself and all this, but part of it just is the experience of a Bitcoin holder. Like, this is not an asset. I mean, I'll talk to anybody. I'll talk to so many people that are older than maybe 50 in my family. And a lot of them, their apprehension of it is it's too volatile. And it is, because they're used to assets that don't move like Bitcoin. I think, all of us, we're kind of used to this volatility now, and it's normal for us. There's a lot of people that are investing in tech stocks that move like this as well, or other assets that they've been exposed to, and the volatility is just part of it. And for me, it all, once you experience it, it builds your conviction again. Once you see it return, it builds your conviction even more. And then the entire time you realize, well, I actually just could have looked at the amount of Bitcoin I had, not the dollar value of it. And that's that saying that seems very meaningless to many people, which is 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. It's kind of a line that people will just, okay, whatever, that doesn't mean anything. But it actually means a lot. It means that is the denominator. The Bitcoin is the denominator. And it's really just about, do you have more Bitcoin over time? Because the dollar price, if you're not actively spending your Bitcoin, if you're not fully living on a Bitcoin standard, it really doesn't really matter day to day what your Bitcoin is worth. And in fact, the only reason you should be looking at charts is if you are trying to think of buying a dip and things like that. If you're thinking about timing it within the short term, which is mostly a fool's errand, but go to it if you want. And then it's just about how many sats you have. Do I have more sats this week than last week? That's really the number that's important. But it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to feel that, which is something you build over time through conviction.
Yeah, that's the main thing for me, is that it just takes time. It's not something you can watch a 2-hour video on or listen to this interview and say, oh, I'm going to be more convicted about Bitcoin. I'm not going to feel as much next time we have a 50% drop. You just got to go through it, because when you go through it, you learn different things along the way. Like this time last year, I was much heavier allocated to Bitcoin than I am a year later. In terms of, I had hardly any cash this time last year. But after going through that whole thing, I realized that, hey, it's probably a good idea to have some cash, not only just to help cover my short-term obligations and not have to sell my Bitcoin, but also when it drops by 50%, you have some dry powder you can put into Bitcoin and get more sats for that same amount of dollars. So I think that's a big one, is just you can't learn it by through somebody else's experience. It's something that you have to go through yourself. And I love what Forrest said there in terms of the balance of sats, because that's what everybody should be looking at, right? I asked this question before. I said, if you looked at your bank balance every morning, your bank account, and that number just went up every day, you'd be pretty happy about that. Nobody does, because you get paid by your employer, you get paid by a customer, and it goes up, but then you got to pay all your bills and it goes down. Whereas Bitcoin, if you looked at your Sparrow wallet and your Bitcoin balance every day and you just saw that number going up, that's a pretty good feeling, I would say. Like, if you just looked at Bitcoin as it is, not as an investment, but an actual money that you can use in the future, that's huge. So that's what really helped me get through it, is I saw my sats going up and up and up, and even accelerated because I could trade the same amount of fiat dollars for the same, or for more sats, those units that I'm trying to collect more of every day. And so that's what's kind of got me through it.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things where we don't know when these things are going to happen. So to what you guys are saying, like, having some cash, like, doing what you need to do. I say a lot, like, you have some, food storage, you have some water, you have some firearms if you can do that, have some cash, whatever it is, right? Like, you got to stay protected for what's coming, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a blackout of the grid. Who knows what's coming? We've seen all these things. We've read all these things for years. We have no idea what's happening. It's just a good thing to do for life, being, somewhat diversified in that sense. Just the ephemeral part, just the survival part, having community. That's why, community with Bitcoiners, people that are like-minded, is so important. It's the number one thing in a survival situation is community, actually, because you don't know what you're going to be short on. But at the end of the day, we know which direction things are going. If Bitcoin can, it's only two things. If Bitcoin can credibly enforce its fixed supply and stay decentralized and secure, and governments are going to continue printing money because it's a debt-based system, there's only one direction we're going, folks. We don't know when that iceberg flipping moment, the suddenly moment, is going to happen, whether it's in the next year, or whether it's in the next 10 years or whatever. But it's coming, and that's all you need to know. So you need to, and that's what we do here every day. We're all trying to figure out, like, okay, when do we think it's happening, in a sense? It's like, your conviction, hodling, to get your education, stay convicted, get reconvicted again when you have these drawdowns, whatever it might be. But we know what direction things are going. You know, the US dollar is the Titanic. The world reserve currency is going down. It's already struck the iceberg. Voting for a new captain is like voting for a new president. Trying to shuffle deck chairs is like trying to get in all these other asset classes, and like, oh, I'm going to go be, I was real estate investor guy for 10 years. I was gold and silver guy 15 years ago. I've been down those roads. And you get to Bitcoin, you see the wizard behind the curtain, and only in Bitcoin, in a protocol outside of that whole system, can you actually, the lifeboat, start backing up and realizing, oh my gosh, the ship is going down. I was told my whole life that ship can't go down. I'm reading the newspaper clippings. Everyone's told me how it can't. And then all of a sudden you start backing away. Only in Bitcoin can you see. You can't see it from altcoins. You can't see it from, you just can't, because Bitcoin is a 4-letter word, but Bitcoin is about learning all the workings of the system. Bitcoin's not about, oh, I've got Bitcoin, so now I'm going to be rich someday. That's what people might think. That's what many of us maybe thought when we got in. And then you start moving away. You're like, yeah, I got on the Bitcoin or the life raft, and you start moving away. And you're like, oh shit, no, I'm really leaving this system that's sinking. That's the aha moment. So at the end of the day, it's like you guys all said, it's just getting what you need to be comfortable to ride out this process. In my eyes, putting a time frame on it, I think it's 10 to 20 years from now. We are a global Bitcoin standard. To me, it's like the demographic shift, the wealthy, the older generation, the gerontocracy, the ones in power that have the wealth, they're in the halls of power. They are going to go away. That's just how life works. We all go away at some point. Well, they'll be gone. The younger generations that know nothing other than Bitcoin, or will know nothing but Bitcoin, that's this event where we cross that event horizon where there is no going back. And it's frustrating, it's annoying, because we see it now today, and we wish everyone saw it now today. Going back to earlier, we don't want people to touch the stove. We don't have to go through this pain, but we're kind of going to have to go through this. It's just like humanity, these turnings. It's just life. So get prepared in the way that the boys were saying, what makes you comfortable, what you can sleep at night, and weather this time period. And if it happens sooner, great. But it's going to take a little bit. It's not going to just happen overnight, and prepare accordingly.
And I think there's another amazing point that Chor kind of already brought up, and Skylar also in the comments brought up amazingly, where he said, I got myself out of all the debt. I maintain a fiat emergency fund and a DCA. And with that setup, which is a very simple setup, it's like it's not complicated to not have debt. It's not complicated to have some fiat emergency cash, and then just DCA every week, month, day, whatever makes sense for your setup. Like, that's the simplest setup you could possibly have. And it's also one of the most powerful setups that you could possibly have. And when I talk to people, when people come up to me in DMs or even in conferences and tell me like, oh, I'm stressed out about the price, I always ask, do you have debt? And more often than not, the answer is yes. And I'm like, yeah, I would also be stressed out about the price if there is a point where I can get margin called. And
Yeah.
then they're like, oh, but I want to do the Sailor strategy. I'm like, you're not doing the Sailor strategy. Sailor cannot get margin called. You can go at margin
Right.
called. Sailor can't. Sailor is fine with a $5,000, $10,000 Bitcoin price. He just like gobbles up those Bitcoin cheaply. But like you will get margin called, and then Bitcoin has a hockey stick moment to 300K, and you sold all your Bitcoin because you had to at like 10K because you got liquidated. And so I think I would always be very cautious with any type of margin call, loaning, borrowing against your Bitcoin. Like, be very sure you can handle that stuff, because having an fiat emergency fund, having the DCA and no debt is a very powerful, very nice strategy that can't really be beaten by a lot of other strategies out there. Like, why would you go ahead and do that and go into debt? I don't know if you guys have any opinions on like borrowing against Bitcoin and debt and all of those things, but I'm very clear on it's probably a bad idea.
Well, I saw a comment in my YouTube channel about 2 weeks ago now, and it was basically a guy. He said he'd been buying Bitcoin since 2017, and kind of what he said, it wasn't a lengthy comment, but I got the message. And basically what he said is, for the last 9 years, he's taken any money that he didn't need, he didn't need in the short term, he wasn't going to buy anything else with, and put that into Bitcoin. And he said he hasn't had one stressful day in his life. And that's what it is. It's people who try to do too much, who are desperate, who think they need this amount of Bitcoin, and they start making silly or stupid decisions to try to chase that quicker. And that's how people get burned. That's how people lose. But if you just look at Bitcoin as a savings technology, and you take any money that you don't need within the next 6 months to a year, and you buy Bitcoin with that consistently at every price, how could you have a bad day? Especially when you zoom out 9 years and look at what the chart's done through that time. Then you don't get caught up price watching, chasing the price, losing sleep over debt that's coming due. I think the simplest strategy is the best strategy in Bitcoin. And that's what a lot of people miss, because there's all these different channels promoting this fancy technique and this crypto coin and this different strategy. And it's just like, take whatever value you have that you aren't going to use, put it in Bitcoin and sleep. Like, it's not that complicated. It's really not.
I think there could be a place for debt in people's portfolio, but it's not for me to say. It's personal finance, and it does add additional risk. And if you can't handle that, that's going to become a problem for you. It's basically that simple. The problem is most people don't realize what is too much stress for them.
Yeah.
And they don't realize what it feels like to have debt. Or the other thing there too, right, is with that example you had, Robin, where somebody had Bitcoin and debt, they now start looking at the Bitcoin as a way to save themselves from the feelings that the debt created. So now it's not just about Bitcoin and maybe what drew them in or what builds conviction for them of being part of the revolution, part of the alternate money network. It's now, well, this debt is feeling like it's boxing me in a little bit. I have to sell this Bitcoin to get out of this situation I'm in. It's now, that is what the option is for them, which is not a good place to be in. So I don't know. For me, like, yeah, it's not my place to tell anybody what to do. But personally, I would never borrow more than 10% worth of my stack. And if it was secured by the asset itself, I would start with an LTV of 30% or less. And so that is incredibly conservative compared to other people. And I would not even think for an instance that I am replicating what Sailor is doing, because he has no margin callable debt on his balance sheet. All of the debt they have is convertible into equity, and they have equity with a liability attached to it in the shape of their preferred instruments. So it's not even debt in a technical sense. And it's a completely different animal. And people are trying and pretending that they can do that, but it is make believe and pretend. It's a completely different story at a personal level if you're taking on especially a securitized debt than what Sailor's doing.
Yeah.
What are you guys thinking actually about strategy? Because I think as we speak right now, there is the strategy world going on. I'm not sure, is it today or tomorrow? I think I could be wrong, but I think it's today.
I think it's today.
I think also it's today. What do you guys think about strategy? Actually, I think I've never talked with any. I think with True, I've talked about strategy briefly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they will become a Bitcoin bank. I know Saylor said like, oh, we're not going to be that. We don't want to be that. But I mean, it's just at some point, I think it's going to become, you're almost stupid if you don't.
You don't tell your enemies. Your game plan.
Exactly. It's the art of war. I mean, it's a Sun Tzu art of war stuff. I mean, you don't. Game theory does.
What do you define as Bitcoin bank?
Just a place where people can do things like this, where they can go lend against their Bitcoin, do things that you're doing in a regular bank in essence. And then I saw some people in the chat talking about ETFs, paper Bitcoin, things of that nature. And so I think strategy will eventually become that. The far off 6102 conspiracy side is that, the US could just say, hey, guess what, Saylor? Those are our coins now. And he's a US company. And so until he's not a US company, they have, he's probably going to play their game, just like Brian Armstrong said with Coinbase. Like 5 years ago, he was like, hey guys, just FYI, like put yourself in self-custody, which is the thing that someone did say in the chat that roots out all of the paper stuff. The more Bitcoin that's in self-custody, the less these games can be played. And so you have a couple things going on here. The strategy part is, could that happen? Yes. And so that's like one of these tail risks. These are things you have to think through and think about. I think strategy will become probably the wealthiest company in the world, or right up there, the top couple, depending on what NVIDIA or, Tesla, what's going on there maybe. But, he's going to do that. But then, outside of that, I forgot where I was going with it now. I don't even know where I was going with that. But anyway, strategy. Sorry, say it again.
I just said that happens to me on a daily basis.
Oh yeah. Anyway, the bank. I think he's going to go that direction with it, and he's going to be, Hal Finney talked about this. That was one of the other things I was going to bring up too, right? Hal Finney talked about this, and we're in a world where I know what I was going to say. So you have this world where you can't have capitalism without capital. Right now, it's a debt-based system, so you don't have capitalism. And I know I sound like a communist here, like, oh, we haven't tried communism the right way before. Well, unfortunately, you can't do communism with human beings. You could do it with maybe AI or maybe robots because they're all the same theoretically or technically speaking or whatever. But capitalism is the best system we've found for human beings. But you cannot have capitalism built on top of a faulty currency, a faulty foundation. And that's what we have. And I've talked to so many people that are like MBAs or whatever, and they're like, well, I mean, inflation is a part of capitalism and like the dollar, all that stuff. But what we miss, obviously, is the input of the system, the dollar, the accounting mechanism is broken. And so everyone goes to school or is in school, government-run schools, and they're not taught, they never ask the first question, what is money? And what are we using to account for all of these things we're learning in school? And they just go to step one or step two, and they never ask the first question. And so we have an economic system built on a faulty foundation. So of course it's going to collapse and then just dissolve into the quicksand. And everyone looks around and it's like, well, we need Mondami. We need a socialist. We need, that's natural. Of course that would happen. Like that, you're dumb to think that wouldn't happen. And so once you have a bedrock of sound money, which we've seen gold and silver over the course of thousands of years, we've had civilizations run on sound money. Again, they're more local. It's hard you can't have a global economy on physical coins, as GG pointed out years ago. You have a ledger or physical coins. So you're going to have this world where if you want a global economy. So some might say, hey, Brandon, I don't want a local economy. Okay, well then you go that way. We're going to have a local or a global economy. So we need a ledger that can't be effed with, and that's only Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the only obvious, credible answer to any of that. So this is where AI, going back full circle, will choose these things, etc. I'm going in many different directions. The other thing I want to say, though, really quick, is that the beauty of Bitcoin is the trade is the settlement, is the finality. Again, this goes back to the global ledger. If you're going to have a global ledger, you have to have finality. Otherwise, the in between there, when I purchase it to when when the transaction is final, that's where all the funny games happen. That's where all the shenanigans happen, the 3% chargebacks and the middlemen, the trusting, and all the paper claims and the ETF, whatever, the shenanigans, the banks, the credit cards. So because Bitcoin, you can play funny games on Bitcoin for a little bit. FTX proved that. There's going to be people doing that. But my big prediction over this next 10 years as things happen, the black swans we're going to see, I think, will be some nation states going down, some banks going down because they play funny games with Bitcoin. And the beauty of Bitcoin that makes it different than the gold and silver is the gold and silver is physical. So you don't know how many coins are in the world and you can't audit it. It's impossible to audit. Who are you going to trust to audit all the coins in the world? Bitcoin is not that. It's the opposite. We can all audit it with our node, and anyone's running every 10 minutes. So the funny games can be played for a little bit, but eventually you F around and you find out. You will get found out. The tide goes out and these shenanigans will end. And that's where, coming full circle with all this, and I'll land the plane, is you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. Society keeps learning, oh, I can't keep effing with things. I have to conform to this protocol. End of story.
Yeah, there's money to be made in the shenanigans that you described right now on top of Bitcoin, paper derivatives and whatnot. But there's risk involved in all of the people holding those claims that don't amount to anything. And as we've seen, Bitcoin is that perfectly auditable ledger, and the games get found out, and those people will be left holding the bag. And then the next time it comes around, they say, you know what? I'm just going to hold Bitcoin because this is too risky. Like, look at all the people that blew up last time doing these same games. Like, and then it'll get smaller and smaller, the group of that are willing to play that incredibly risky game. And so it all comes back. All roads lead to spot Bitcoin.
That's what I was going to say when we were still talking about the AI stuff too, is that with the internet being a protocol, I think that the world wasn't the same state that it's in right now when the internet came out. People weren't as concerned. There was no real risk of rug. People didn't care. They still don't care about privacy. But it's different when you have your livelihood and everything that you've worked for over your life. When that starts to slip away from you, people act a little bit differently. And I think that we've kind of mentioned the boomers have the wealth right now, which is going to be passed down to Gen X, millennials. And the Gen X and millennials, I think, feel a lot differently than the baby boomers and the generation before them about, agency, about sovereignty, about taking responsibility for what you own and not trusting with somebody else. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of different attempts to try to capture Bitcoin, but ultimately they're all going to fail because of that. And I think we have a generation here, I'm speaking as a millennial, who gives a shit about that stuff. And I don't think that my parents ever did give a shit about that stuff. Not because they're a different person than me, but because they were raised in a different environment than I was. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that the baby boomers had radio, TV, and the newspaper for their information. We have unlimited access to all information except the Epstein files. But for the most part, we have access to everything. And anybody who's willing to spend a couple hours looking into things, you can change your mind pretty quickly. And I think that there's a lot of people in this demographic who are willing to do that. And we're going to be the ones who have the wealth in a decade or two from now. And so that's why it's not a rush for me, because I know what's coming at the end of this.
Mm-hmm.
Just casually dropping the Epstein thing.
You set that up.
Well, I mean, even that though, like the internet that we see now, because it's been captured, is what, like 2% of what's actually out there on the deep dark web, as they call it. But like, what are we able to see? Even like 2% of it? That's the Epstein file is just kind of a microcosm of the reality. Like the window that have been able to see, and our parents was like this before we got here. So it's widening. I guess that's the point. The window's widening.
And it is great. Sorry, Brandon. I think it's crazy to think about the possibilities with that. And I love the point that Forrest made. We do see with the internet that you have the closed sourced apps that kind of win over most of the mainstream, but you always have the possibility to go down yourself, and you can still use the open source things. And the same with Bitcoin. Even in a world where most of the Bitcoin are paper Bitcoin, you can go down to self-custody and do it yourself. And I think this is the main thing that I'm trying to get in. I want to do just for Brandon, because you said like it will be a bank. That's why I asked you for the definition of a bank, because I kind of think they already are. And I think Saylor is not that secretive about it. Even when I listened to the recent Natalie Brunell interview he did on his channel, I think it dropped like 2 days ago or so. And they talked about Stretch, and he continuously said what Stretch is. And he's like, people want a savings account or bank account. I cannot remember which word he used. I think he used a bank account or a savings account, one of those two words. And he said they want a bank account that gives them 11% and has zero vol. And I'm like, okay, but you're providing that bank account, that savings account, so you are a bank. So he cannot really say that we're not a bank anymore if he gives them a bank account that he calls himself a bank account that gives them almost no volatility with 11% yield on top of that. So I don't know, like I think Strategy kind of already is a bank or a central bank or small central bank or private central bank, like whatever you want to call it. It's kind of a bank.
Yeah,
NASDAQ
I
listed
agree.
bank, not NASDAQ listed central bank that issues its own products that people buy instead of currency, and they use those products to buy more Bitcoin. So I think they'll just continue to expand their product set to whatever they can use to speculatively attack the dollar and buy Bitcoin with. Does that mean they start opening up branches and we go to, the Strategy ATM, not just the common stock ATM, but like an actual automatic teller machine? I don't know if it leads all the way to what we traditionally know as a bank, but it has bank-like properties, as you said already, Robin, for sure.
Agreed. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's I like that because it's the sly roundabout way. So that's what it is. I was thinking more in the technical definition of like just the legacy world of like when are people going to accept it, or like, oh yeah, we are a bank now. But yeah, no, you guys are spot on.
I was even thinking about they have all those engineers. They have an app, but they could literally make an app where you can have a bank account, where you can have like all those things. I don't think it makes sense for them right now. I don't know if it makes sense down the line, but it would be so easy, I think, for them to do such a thing if they want to do it. But at the same time, why would they do it? They don't have any incentive currently to do that, because we already have all our brokerage accounts where you can buy Stretch or like Stream in Europe, and all of those things. So like they don't need to develop any of those things.
I think it helps them de-risk by just focusing on releasing these core products as well. And then like, they talked about pretty early on, like Stretch could be tokenized, right? But we're not going to be the ones that do it. But now there's these other businesses that are now tied into the well-being of MSTR. So if any regulatory kind of pressure comes at MSTR, it now doesn't just affect this centralized company that's monopolized all of this. It's actually affecting all of these other things. So if pension plans and savings account or retirement accounts start holding all of these, and there's some sort of scrutiny around the products of them and how it is a blatant speculative attack on the dollar and a reinforcing of Bitcoin as, this capital base, they can say, well, you're now affecting millions of people that now hold this, as opposed to just Strategy that is controlling all of it, right? It's intertwined. They want to get as intertwined, and really, I mean, you can see this with the convertible bonds they offered as well. It was all these massive banks that they partnered up to do the release of those. It wasn't just one, like it was, they're trying to make as many connections in the TradFi as possible so that they're cemented into the current fiat system as they can be, because that actually protects them and allows them to continue to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be, I think Strategy is building something very powerful. I agree with everything that you guys said. I think the main thing for me, though, is that people need to realize that we're moving from centralization to decentralization. The world's fracturing. We're moving away from the fiat, the Titanic. It's funny that we use the Titanic as an analogy there, because it's kind of what created the whole fiat system, if you think about it, the Titanic.
Yeah.
But the point that I want to make here is that whether it's Stretch, Strategy, the next AI stock, big stock, I think the last thing people want to do at this stage of the game is get distracted with other things, because an 11% dividend sounds pretty enticing to a lot of people, but that means you're capping your upside. I think that's what a lot of people miss. They kind of see the 11% that they can get from it, but if you're holding something like Bitcoin, which has dropped 50%, And with everything kind of macro happening right now, you're going to miss out. That's a huge opportunity cost if you're holding anything other than Bitcoin, I think, at this point, whether that is strategy, stretch, another crypto token, hopefully not, but real estate, gold even. Products like that, even though they guarantee something, and it makes a lot of sense for some people, but if you're younger and if you have a long runway here, I don't think there's a better place to be than Bitcoin and self-custody, because I think that part of that fractionalization that's happening in the fiat system is that we're going to see the difference between real assets and fake assets. And even though strategies and Sailor's assets are tied to something real, it's still kind of reliant on that system to function properly. And so I just don't trust it in myself. I would rather hold Bitcoin if I had cash. I'm not looking at anything other than Bitcoin and self-custody. And I think we've seen in the past, it's been, crypto tokens, it's been treasury companies. Now it's kind of AI that everybody's excited about. But if you just would have held Bitcoin in self-custody, nobody would have messed with you. And you're doing pretty good over the last, 10 years of it through all these distractions. So that'd kind of be my message, is just focus on one thing, get Bitcoin, take self-custody of it. The more Bitcoin we can get into self-custody of people like us, I think the better the future is going to be for us, and the less manipulation they can play with this Bitcoin.
Yeah, and that's why I was showing briefly this comment, because you nailed it. Like it's kind of like becoming your own central bank, becoming your own banker. I wonder though how many. I think it's pretty niche, and I think it's we are in a very small. I don't want to say elite group, but I don't have any other word for that right now. But in a small group of people that care about their own sovereignty, they care about who holds their money, and we don't trust anyone. We take it ourselves in our hands. I don't think this is like 50% of population. I think it's more like 10. Maybe 2%, maybe 7%. I don't know what the percentage is.
People like us?
Yeah, I think people that like
0.0002% probably.
Currently.
There's a debate.
Yeah. Are we so crazy?
I like this debate.
Well, I mean, we're self-proclaimed elites here, Robin. So yeah, I think it's a pretty small group.
But the thing is,
now that's interesting. Currently, I would say yes, maybe. But then to Robin, to your point, I think there are 5, 7, 10% of humans out there that really are this. I would say that'd be my guess.
Yeah, like what is if Bitcoin is the most dominant asset and it's like everyone has it, how many people use it in self-custody on the main layer, or like at least on Lightning or something like that?
Very few, but if it ends up being so important, as we're saying, to have self-custody Bitcoin, and it pushes you into some sort of elite status financially or otherwise, it's not that hard to do, and it's getting easier and easier to do. So even though it seems like it's going to be sort of this small subsection of people that will do this, if there's such a benefit to having done it, it incentivizes people to do it. So I think people will have to move out of their comfort zone and learn how to self-custody and learn what a seed phrase is and stuff like that, if they want, because they'll just see what the benefit of it is. They'll see that their neighbor that's a Bitcoiner is able to go on vacation whenever they want. And it's that I love the movie Office Space, and the main character, his dream is to do nothing, right? And it's not that and that's everybody's dream. It's not to do nothing, but be able to do nothing, right? Not
answer to nobody
into the office.
Yeah.
And that's what Bitcoin allows you to do in self-custody, is it gives you your power back. It's that perfect battery that stores your time and energy. So I think as more and more people will see this over time, hey, what did you do differently? Oh, I have a cold card with a Sparrow, and I bought Bitcoin and I hold it in self-custody. Oh, can you teach me how to do that? Or how do I do that? And you watch a couple of videos and you're good. I think more and more people will just have to learn. Anyway, I gotta run, guys. Great conversation, but I gotta go. So
Great
I'm gonna
stuff.
drop off.
Okay, thanks, Forrest. See you, buddy.
Yeah, this is amazing, because we talking about the intersection of like AI and Bitcoin, and I think the most important one. Oh gosh, I'm like not centralized now at all. The most important of that all is kind of being focused on the sovereignty and the individual, And I think a lot about how the individual that has now the knowledge of AI, the knowledge of where the fiat system is going, knowledge of what Bitcoin is doing, how can we best make sure to benefit from that, so that if our sons, our great sons, like how is it called, like the son of the sun, in like 40 years, 50 years, is asking us like, what did you do when this all started with ChatGPT and Bitcoin and all those things? How can we make sure right now to best manifest that world? And like I try to do my best, but like it's a difficult question of like, how can you capture that the best way to actually benefit your family and your bloodline coming after you?
Sorry, Brandon, go ahead.
No, I was going to say really quick that it's buying Bitcoin. Like if the AI stuff's too much for you, it's buying Bitcoin, which is going to be the monetary layer of all this. So to me, that's the answer. And then self-custody, like you guys said a minute ago, and away you go. Take it away, Jor.
That's exactly what I was going to say, because I just think that people are going to get caught up chasing things, trying to chase gains, and I think that if you look out in the future and you see that the costs of everything is going to come down, everything is going to be free or very close to free, then I'd say number one, thank yourself for being here right now. Like, smile, enjoy yourself. I really think that there's a lot of Bitcoiners who they think a small stack right now, but it's going to be worth a fortune in the not so distant future. And they're just caught up in chasing what's next and trying to grow their number without actually focusing on like the fundamentals of things. And so I think, like Brandon said, the best thing you can do, in my opinion, is just buy Bitcoin, because when you consider all the things that's happening right now, we started with AI agents. What are they going to be using for money? So you think about the demand, like the adoption of Bitcoin, we think in human terms. But think about when every AI agent doing all these different jobs on the internet are accepting Bitcoin and wanting Bitcoin, the demand for Bitcoin doubles, triples, quadruples quickly. So there's more people, more demand chasing that scarce bottom line of Satoshis. So the value of your sats are going to go up significantly with that. I would say the other part of that too, not just AI, but the baby boomers selling their real estate, selling their gold, cashing out their pensions. A lot of that will also flow into Bitcoin. And I'd say the last thing here in terms of the demand of it, because that's what you have to consider, right? Because there's two reasons why the Bitcoin price goes up. Number one is because they print more money and it goes up artificially, but that's not really great for Bitcoiners because the price of everything goes up as well. But the real way that Bitcoin goes up is by more demand. And so more AI agents using Bitcoin is going to be a big one. And the baby boomers are going to be selling their assets. That's going to flow into Bitcoin. And there was one more thing that I had there, but overall, I think the best way to protect yourself is just to get Bitcoin, because think about the value of all those sats that you have going up as the use case, as the demand grows for it. That's the best way to protect yourself. You don't have to get too crazy and creative and build all these things. You could if you want to, but it's like, why would you? Just let all that productivity flow into the sats that you already have. That's exactly what's going to happen. Is we have the ability now, thanks to things like OpenClaw, where somebody out there in the world can turn their idea into something in a day, which used to take a year, 2 years, a bunch of money to do. But we can do it at the snap of our fingers now. And that's a pretty powerful thing. And all that productivity and energy is all going to flow into the Bitcoin network. And anybody who's here now holding these scarce units is going to be a beneficiary of that. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah. I mean, there's only a finite amount of time that this system is going to continue operating. The debt-based global, there's no currency on earth backed by anything, right? I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's a completely failed system. It's the end game is coming at some point. And again, like we've said, it's probably the next decade or so, next decade or two. I know Stephen Paranod, you've had him on Robin a few times. I just talked to him recently. And like he says, like he's probably like the next 8 years or so, because you're going to see, like when you look at like even the power law or some of these things, right, where like you have massive dampening in the volatility. We've had dampening obviously over time now,
Yeah.
but the amounts they're going to move are going to be a lot. So like we just had a 50% drawdown from 125 or whatever to 65, whatever it is, 60. It's a 50% move. But can you imagine a 40% drawdown when you're going from 2 million down to, whatever that is, 1.2 million? You're going down 800,000. We went down 60,000 just now. Well, imagine going down 800,000, but that's actually less volatility move from than it was from 126 down to 60. So that's where he's like, yeah, we're going to have, insurance companies, the banks, the legacy, like these legacy companies trying to get in then because the volatility is at a point where now it makes sense. Now they're comfortable. It makes, it's just better, but the movements, the price, the nominal price will be massive. And that's really in no short order. That's not 80 years from now. That's 8 years from now. So anyway, that to me is it's getting Bitcoin. It's the thing where you can put your finite time and energy into an equally finite asset, and that's, to me, it's like we all have a finite time on Earth. So what are you going to do with that? We all trade it for infinite pieces of paper right now. That is wow, or infinite digits on a computer. That is just absolutely bonkers. And people are going to wake up to that. The younger generation, under 40, under 45, is done with the lack of transparency, done with there's no merit, there's no accountability, done with that. And I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, you guys are obviously all of similar age to me. We're all under 40, 45 years old. And everyone you talk to that's under that age is sick and tired of being run over and there being no accountability for absolutely anything. And that's why the decade or two of auditing we are about to do, going through government agencies, the tearing down of a lot of these agencies, the auditing of the money, everything, it's all coming. It's all coming. And if you're blind, if you don't think that's going to happen over the next 20 years.
I want to bring something in from Stephen that I'm curious what you two guys think about. He talked, I think, on both my podcasts, or like even all three of them that I did with him already now, about the perfect allocation towards Bitcoin and it not being 100%, which hurts my heart because it was 100% for so long. And he talked about how the best allocation is around 70 to 80%. I think 75 he mentioned. I'm not 100% sure. It was around that range. And the theory behind that is you can DCA, like if you always keep it at 75% allocation and the Bitcoin price drops like 50%, your Bitcoin allocation will drop significantly. And then you have to buy more Bitcoin to kind of make that allocation go up again to 75%. And if Bitcoin price rips, you kind of maybe either skim some off the top or just like let it ride out and compensate with cash flow, however you want to do it. And so you end up actually after a period of time with more Bitcoin than you would if you just go all in, because you have the ability to use that volatility, because we're going down 40, 50% on a regular basis. So use that dip to buy more Bitcoin, which was an interesting thought. Up until he brought it up, actually, I was like, I don't need a cash buffer. I just go all in. The biggest Bitcoin exposure will get me the most Bitcoin. But I'm rethinking that now a little bit to like increase my cash buffer. And I'm thinking of like maybe a perfect Bitcoin allocation is around 70 to 80%, and maybe playing with some strategy, maybe with some stretch, and maybe with some actual cash with the rest of the 20, 30%. How do you guys think about that?
I went through a brief phase where I had 100 and some percent allocated into Bitcoin and equivalents. And yes, it is painful when there's a downside. Then when there's a downturn, it's pretty painful. So I learned that lesson the hard way. I kind of had the concept of, okay, I'm going to be here for a long time, so I'm just going to put everything into Bitcoin and associated companies, which would be, Bitcoin self-custody, some Bitcoin on my Aqua wallet, Bitcoin with strategy, I guess, through their machine there. But I've definitely changed my mind on that. And I love that strategy, Robin. I think 80% is a really good allocation, because you will, and that's what you have to keep in mind, is that you will end up with more Bitcoin than if you just go 100% in. Because when you're 100% in, you're forced to sell when you don't want to sell Bitcoin, and you lose a bunch of your stack. So you go down, you drop. Whereas if you have some cash on the sidelines, and I think that's what I would stress in terms of that strategy, Robin, is make sure that it's in a completely different system than Bitcoin, like cash. because if you have some in Bitcoin and some in strategy and some in stretch, and Bitcoin goes down, all of your investments go down. And so you don't really maintain that stability that you're looking for, that you can pump back into Bitcoin. So I think that's a good strategy in terms of 80-20, like 80% Bitcoin, 20% cash. But it also depends, because everybody has different obligations coming up, and, cars, houses, weddings, babies. So I don't think there's a perfect answer. I just think it is very important for people, if this is your first time in Bitcoin, going through the cycles here, the ups and downs, is to keep some cash. And that was a mistake that I've made in the past, and learn from it. But that's the time in Bitcoin. It's not just the purchasing power, but you gain a lot of knowledge and insights just by going through this stuff.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier as well. Sorry, Robin. To say we talked about this earlier a little bit, but it's the firearm thing, right? Like food storage, all these different things. Like that's 100% of me is not in Bitcoin, right? You have other things, I have a house, this other stuff. I have a few rental properties still. I offloaded a lot over the last number of years, but for taxes, you're trying to juggle all these things. So like these things happen. So you get anywhere from 50, 70, 80% might be in Bitcoin. And obviously the last handful of years, those numbers have really jumped over time. You keep stacking, the numbers go up. But I'm not over here rebalancing my portfolio. And I don't think you guys are saying that either necessarily. It's just like, hey, I have a little bit of my life over here that's in the fiat system, because I don't have all day, everyone's got different things. Like you said, I have 4 kids, we homeschool them, like we're doing things. Like I don't have all day to sit here and manage my finances like I'm a hedge fund manager. Yeah. However, that's the point. That's the beauty of Bitcoin. You can have this stack of Bitcoin, you keep saving like it's savings, and it's the thing that no one can censor, take away, freeze, and inflate away from you. And that's your savings. That's what you live your life. So again, it might be 1% for some person, just getting on board and just dipping their toes in, or maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 50%, whatever that is. But that goes back to this comfort in being here, because it's not going to be something where like, oh, this happens tomorrow, as much as we want it to be. It's going to play out over the coming years here. And so you have to be there. You just have to be there. Yeah. It's a marathon. You have to be there. You got to be in the game.
I heard it's America. That's why I was smiling, but it's a marathon. Just like randomly, like it's America. But I wanted to bring that in because it's an interesting thought, because obviously the drawdowns get less. If I don't know where the bottom with this drawdown is, I think now we are about 50% down, maybe 48, 49. I don't know the exact number. So we could fall more. We could also not fall more. If it stays with the 50% or like stays under 70%, then it was less than the previous big drawdowns of 70%, previously 80%. We had 90+% drawdowns. So the drawdowns get less and less, especially now with more and more institutional buyings. All of those things will actually end up having a dampening effect on the drawdowns, especially as also more people come in, the market cap gets bigger and all of that things. And now the question comes on the other side, of the flip side of that. What if Bitcoin hits kind of a supply shock and we don't have those dips anymore, and like the 20% dip is kind of rare? I personally don't think we are quite there yet. I'm also not sure if supply shock is something I truly believe in. It's more of like more people realizing that Bitcoin is really an amazing store of value. But whatever happens, like we've seen it with the 100K, like so many OGs have sold. So many people that were in the Bitcoin for a long time had the laser eyes to 100K, all of a sudden now sold because they had a huge amount of wealth. Think about the person that bought Bitcoin at $1,000 and all of a sudden he made 100x on that. And he put all his money in there and he's 100x wealthier than before. Obviously, it's logical for him to maybe improve his life by 2x if he is 100x wealthier than before. And so my point more with the supply shock is, if we rip from now 60K to 600K and then maybe to 1 million, there will be a lot of people along the way that will sell Bitcoin use it to buy a home, to retire yourself, to get your kids to a better private homeschool, like all whatever you want to do with money. You go on a holiday, go on a 1 year like a world tour of like figuring out where is the best pasta in the world, probably Italy. As like whatever you want to do with your money in your life, if you get 100x wealthier, you're very incentivized to use some of the money. And so what I think will happen is if we get like an uprun, we will hit some plateau where the buyers get a little bit exhausted and some of the sellers come back in because we just like got a huge run up. And so I'm not sure if we ever hit a true supply shock, but I could see something else happening, that we hit huge hyperinflation and the currency just collapses, which on the Bitcoin side will look like a supply shock, but it's not really a supply shock. It's more like, yeah, the underlying currency that we are measuring Bitcoin in, it just collapsed. What are you guys thinking?
Yeah. This is kind of what I was alluding to earlier with like the younger generations. I do believe that the loss of trust all over society is going to be there with the currency as well, and that's hyperinflation. So whether it's like what kind of hyperinflation, like whether it's like a walking inflation, creeping, running inflation, hyperinflation, like all the different terms they have for it. I mean, at some point you have all government currencies have gone to zero in all of human history, every single one. So this one's no different. Just because America has 13 aircraft carriers and 165 nuclear subs or whatever, it doesn't matter. As soon as enough people, a saturation point is hit in society where people don't believe in that currency, China, Russia, like all these countries have slowly crept they're slowly, tiptoeing back away from the US dollar, hoping no one notices, right? This has been going on for 15 years. And again, social media, this is joined up with the rise of social media and all these things happening. Well, guess what? Now look, all of us are talking. We weren't doing this 15 years ago. So now you have people spreading awareness about, hey, this currency is stealing from you. The currency is robbing you. Hey, the currency's got you on a hamster wheel. Hey, the currency is, the satanic pedophile cult, everywhere in the world. That's because of this currency. Like all these things that people are now talking about, that takes a while to come through the system. And it's, to me, the Stephen Paranod of the power law, and then it mixes with the demographic shift of the next 10 years, all these things are coming together to create this massive explosion. And then you have AI that's going to be at the same time with all this. Bitcoin's going to have to account for that because it's the only finite money there is that can credibly enforce its supply to account for all this. Elon Musk has talked about this too recently with there's going to be energy money. Yeah. Henry Ford talked about it 100 years ago. I mean, like, how many more signposts do you need to see all these things coming? And people, then they sit back and say, I don't know. Like, it's like, guys, it's blatantly obvious if you put in the work and do it all and put it all together and draw it out in a mind map and say, wow, look at all these 1,000 bullet points I just drew out and they're all going one direction. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. I had an idea there, Brown. I love listening to you guys because it always, as I listen, I just come up with these different ideas and thoughts I have, and then you get onto something else, and then I forget what I was going to say. That's usually how it goes. But I think that as we go forward here, I think that again we're separating real from fake, and I think that's never been more. That's what it was. We've never had an asset before. So when you ask me, do I think there's going to be a supply shock in Bitcoin? I have no idea. And the reason why I have no idea is because we have nothing to compare Bitcoin to. There's two important characteristics I think that Bitcoin has that set it apart from everything else and just demonstrate the fact that we really have no idea. So number one is the absolute scarcity. That's a pretty important one. Most people are aware of that. But we've also never had a measurement, a unit of account that was fully 100% transparent to everybody. So those two things alone, because you might say, well, gold's pretty scarce, but you also don't have a ledger of all the gold and who owns it. You don't have that. So I don't know, because Bitcoin is so unique in the sense that there's absolute scarcity and there's a transparent ledger that tracks everything. So if I were to bet, I would say that we will get some sort of supply shock in the future. I don't know what that looks like, but based on those two things, I would say that the answer is yes. Depending on how well the old system can mask it for a while and manipulate that, that's a different story. But I do think that those two things, absolute scarcity and a transparent ledger that tracks the units, that's different than anything we've ever had before. So I think we could. I just don't know what it looks like and when it happens. But it is totally unique. It's different than anything we've ever had before, which is pretty exciting.
The other thing I was going to say really quick, and I forgot to say this too, and I couldn't agree more. Again, at some point, we're going along with the supply shock, hyperinflation, which is just, again, hyperinflation kind of is a 4-letter word too, right? But it's a loss of trust in the currency. So let's just maybe go with that. And that's speeding up, people losing trust. At some point, you only be able to work or mine Bitcoin to get Bitcoin. And that's, again, where the supply shock comes in. There's not going to be some exchange rate where like you're going to have, your currency is going to be worth nothing. At some point, who is going to accept the government currency? And this, again, this goes into this next 10, 20 years. Is some kid that's 10 years old, like my children, who know the difference between all the monies and currencies in the world, and this younger generation, and then Bitcoiners and teaching their kids, who out there 10, 20 years now is going to accept a government paper currency if it exists at that point? They're not. Newsflash. They are not going to. And so you will not be able to get Bitcoin unless you work for it. You provide a service. You're swinging a hammer, doing something, or you mine it. End of story. And so all these, like a lot of the arguments we have as Bitcoiners are moot. Not that we shouldn't have them, but they really are moot because a lot of these things are just going to get absolutely evaporated, just blown to smithereens, these arguments. And it's an open voluntary network. You think about that. It's open source code. We kind of talked about this in the beginning with AI. It's an open source code. All of us here are spending our time in it, defending it, marketing it, spreading it, building on it. I mean, think about that. What else in the world is there a monetary network that's doing that? Everywhere else, you are coerced. You have to, at the end of a barrel of a gun, to use that currency. Again, that is not going to last forever. People will try to do stuff, but the younger generation will not be putting up with that. Do we think that we're going to be moving toward or back to some government paper that just screwed everyone over? No, of course not. The open voluntary network is going to continue, Gresham's law, or maybe whatever you want to call it. They're going to continue going towards the open thing that's audited, it promotes merit and accountability and trust. End of story.
I think this comment is very worth highlighting. He said, or she said, the only thing that is verifiably scarce is Bitcoin. Everything else is abundant, even gold. There is gold in the ocean, water. We just need the technology to extract it. And I think this is very true because everything else you could basically extract from the ocean. If there is some kind of thing like gold that gets a lot more valuable overnight, we have a bigger incentive to dig for it and to get it out of the ocean, out of planets, out of like flying to Mars and like figuring out where the gold is hiding there. So having this asset in a global connected world where we power ourselves with AI, with everyone that has access to that, with the internet that has all those amazing shows that explain all those things, there can be a moment in time where it just makes it where it's so obvious that a lot of people flock in and there's like a huge fear of missing out event. And then there's like the supply shock happening. I still have a hard time seeing it because of like the sellers, because of the normal market dynamics of people at some stages want to sell some and like take some profits and having that diversification nonsense in their head. But I don't know, like we don't know, but like it definitely could happen because we don't have anything to compare it to in the history. Like that's why I think Bitcoin podcasts are so interesting and so many people look at it, because we don't have a clear idea where it is actually going because we have nothing to compare it towards.
And the comment there talked about the technology. When we get the technology, we can extract gold from the ocean. But here's the thing. Do we want to? Like, it's not just the technology being able to, but is there demand for it? There's gold in the mountains. There's gold in space. There's gold under the ocean, obviously. But there's not enough people who actually want gold. The central banks own the majority of the gold. What's it doing there? Just sitting there. You know how much of a waste that is? Why? And so when somebody's deciding whether they're going to allocate energy to mine gold underneath the ocean, or they allocate that energy to mine Bitcoin, there's a pretty clear-cut winner there, I think. And so all this energy, I think, will start being directed in terms of human labor, in terms of technology, a lot of this productivity, it all flows into Bitcoin. And I think that's kind of the theme today, is that we got AI, we got Bitcoin, which in an abundant world, you have to have something that's scarce. And Bitcoin is the kind of thing that anchors it. I would be terrified of what the world looks like in a decade from now if we didn't have something like Bitcoin. And that was the other thing too that I was going to mention there. I talked about the AI agents wanting Bitcoin. I think also the AI agents and spam and bots that are going to flood the internet. The other part of that too is people are going to have to actually verify that they're real. And what are they going to use for that on the internet? It's going to be Bitcoin. Why is it going to be Bitcoin? Because you can send fractions of a penny, and to do that, you don't have to pay $2 to leave a comment. You can leave 2 sats and leave your 2 sats literally, which the Lightning Network facilitates that. But the other thing too is, like, with all this technology and AI and things like that, unlimited amounts of crypto tokens and things that can be spun up and created, unlimited amount, abundance of that. But there's only 21 million Bitcoin. And so that's what's going to, I think, verify real in a fake internet. And that's going to be very valuable. So you think about those two things, AI agents and verifying that you're real on the internet. Think about the demand and the users who are going to be using Bitcoin on the internet. It's the currency of the internet. And we're seeing that. We're seeing why we needed a currency for the internet, because of all this AI spam bullshit that's about to capture the internet. We need something to peg it back to physical reality. And that's exactly what Bitcoin is.
I would just wanted to show this to you guys, but for some reason I couldn't figure out how to get Brandon back on the screen.
I wonder what's going on there.
There we go. Okay, here we are. Sorry, Brandon, for kicking you off the stage here. I wanted to show you guys this. This is rentahuman.ai. Did you guys see this already? Where an AI agent...
I heard about it, I think. I've not seen it.
Where an AI agent can rent a human. So you can connect your AI agent, and then there are humans that put some kind of like services out there. So you can get margarine or so for like $30 an hour, and she does like real world human communication things. And so that is literally the last piece that is missing for a AI agent, because there are still things that agents can't do. And now they can just buy themselves this. And I think I saw that they're actually using, they can actually also accept and deal with Bitcoin on this platform. I haven't checked it, I haven't verified it, but it's really interesting when you think an AI agent having a wallet and using that wallet to do things in the real world, automate things, and they can do everything digitally and then give it kind of in the real world also kind something. So I have never really like done anything with that website, but I think 2-3 guests already brought it up, and I was like, that's wild. And I mean, it's kind of, we already saw that with Uber. I think Uber is already kind of a rent a human AI thing, because like Uber is kind of the AI and the Uber drivers are kind of the humans that Uber is renting for doing this stuff. So we're already seeing that a little bit, but I think this could absolutely like blow up in the future, where the humans are no longer the boss, but like an AI agent is the boss, or like human that runs an AI agent. What are you guys thinking?
If you don't want to work for an AI, then I'd suggest getting some Bitcoin, because that's, if you play out this world, that's what's going to happen, is that the AIs are going to be the new boss, and you're going to be working for them unless you have money already. And that's kind of what Brandon said there, is that the supply shock, it won't be something that necessarily happens overnight, but it comes in the form of people not accepting government issued paper anymore. And so when you either have to mine it or work for it, what do you think the work is going to be? It's going to be doing work for robots, for AIs, because AIs can't do everything. They can do things in the digital world, but you still need people in the physical world. And so unless you want your AI to get you out of bed, maybe force you out of bed and put an alarm on your phone until you get out of bed, then you're going to need some.
You just muted yourself for some reason.
Muted.
How about now?
I hear you again. Yeah.
Oh wait. Yeah. I just said you're going to have to work for AI or get some Bitcoin. Then you can do what you want to. You can focus on creating things instead of answering to an AI. Imagine how bad that would be. People feel bad taking shit from their boss. Imagine taking shit from an AI agent. God, that'd be bad.
We are in clown world. Yeah. And it's, someone said here, humanoid robots too. I mean, eventually, again, you don't get your sats now. You don't trade your fiat worthless, cuck bucks in for Bitcoin now. And then you miss this next window. What? Then the humanoid robots are talking to AI agents, and then you're just SOL. You're on that UBI government CBDC, digital passport. You're gone. You're living out in the desert somewhere. So, I mean, that's the world, like, just like we started, that's like the divergent world we are entering of information and money that is rapidly, not approaching us. It's here. Like, we are rapidly diverging right now.
Yep.
It's wild. We even talked mining. I mean, you think about like mining and like what could come with AI and just renewable energy and Bitcoin mining. And like, it's wild what could be happening in the future here. That's a whole nother show that could be done. So
we got lots of weeks ahead.
This is so freaking interesting. But yeah, we have to make a stop at some point because we could literally talk.
We'll just keep
like 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. And I think like 1.5, 2 hours max is kind of like a nice thing. And as we said last time around, we will make an own channel for that. So we can bring all the comment sections, because I'm trying to monitor everything a little bit. And it's really cool because they're like my comment section on my YouTube channel. There's from Brandon, the YouTube channel, there's from Joe, previously also from Forrest, and all those comment section kind of being split up. It takes out the fun of it. And so we want to create long-term a place where we all are, and also the comment section can live in like one place. And I think this will be really cool. And so like now for like about a month, we will test it out, just see how you guys like it. So far, I think we got really good feedback. And then after that, we slowly move to our own channel where this format actually has their own place. So thank you guys for coming on again. Brandon, Joe, any famous last words?
Nope. I'm just looking forward to next Tuesday already. This has been great, boys. BTC, be the change. Mastermind, we want to do this weekly. We want to do it at the same time so people can kind of build it into their schedules if they're interested in this kind of stuff. I like the fact that we're all in different parts of the world. I like the fact that we're all somewhat non-technical. I guess Forrest is kind of down a couple different rabbit holes, but I feel like we speak to the people pretty well here. And I think Bitcoin needs more of that. And so we are filling the demand for it. So thanks everybody for, I'm not going to wrap things up here, but I just want to say thanks to everybody in the chat for tuning in today and showing up and taking on the responsibility, because not an easy life. The lonely place here in Bitcoin. We want to do all we can to help people through their journey and feel like it's a big community. We're all kind of just friends here on Team Bitcoin, trying to be the change. Yeah, so true. Thanks everybody. Awesome chat. Awesome time, boys. Look forward to many, many more of these, and they're going to be needed because we're going through a wild, I don't even know, cataclysmic events, the fourth turnings, the cycles, everything coming together. And community, like we said earlier, is the number one thing in a survival situation. So having people that are like-minded around you going the same direction it could not be more apparent and needed than it is right now. So don't let the fiat world break your will, break your spirit. Get off the Titanic, get on the lifeboat. And we will be back next Tuesday. Bye-bye. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys.